Sacred Societies, Their Place in Today's World, Part 3. The time has come for the dissolution of the secret societies, rings our present thesis. In Part 1 of this series, we affirmed the repugnance of secrecy in today's world, especially with respect to the existence, proceedings, and agendas of secret societies, as well as of whatever truths they conceal. We furthermore proposed that the time has come for the exposure of their so-called secrets, whether these stand constructively or destructively to consciousness, and whether they promote spiritual evolvement or devolvement. In Part 2, we noted a developing general trend for secret societies to work against the better interests of humanity, and instead to work toward its defilement and the hijacking of its consciousness. And we set forth that the inner urge of humanity to evolve transmutatively is becoming imminently a conscious one, and a necessary one. And it demands that each of us recognize, realize, and even begin to manifest the sovereign self within, for our own sakes individually as well as in whole, and for the sakes of following rounds of the species. We therefore preliminarily established that there no longer exists any reason convincing enough to continue the concealment or hoarding of truths associated with these affairs. And so we have also affirmed that secret societies, under whatever name or guise, no longer have a place in today's world, and regardless of their motives. Now, I could entertain both you and I with further talk of mystery schools, secret societies, secret oaths, secret initiations, secret teachings. Such a story could go on with discourse about Pythagoras' initiation into the Egyptian, Babylonian, and Chaldean mysteries, and about the Orphic mysteries, and the Bacchic and Dionysian rites, and about the secret sun worship of Copernicus as constituting his reason for postulating the sun rather than the earth as the center around which galactic life revolves, and even about possible connections with ancient astronauts, multidimensional entities, inner earth inhabitants, human genome engineers, and about all the rest, ad infinitum. I point this out to remind you that the extent of secret society history is voluminous, and that ample and prolific sources for it exist elsewhere. But I put forth at the outset that brevity along these lines would serve with elegant sufficiency our immediate purpose, so let's stay on our present course to its conclusion. With respect to two secret societies previously mentioned near obsession, with death and tombs, not all has necessarily been as it at first may seem. There has existed an associated high end. And of certain ancient rites along these lines, the modern world knows little. Manly P. Hall, that 33rd degree Mason who actually stood up and looked us in the eye, informs us, for example, that in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, was enacted the second drama, of the second death. Here the candidate, after being crucified upon the cross of the solstices and the equinoxes, was buried in the great coffer. There is a profound mystery to the atmosphere and temperature of the king's chamber. It is of a peculiar death-like cold, which cuts to the marrow of the bone. This room was a doorway between the material world and the transcendental spheres of nature. While his body lay in the coffer, the soul of the neophyte soared as a human-headed hawk through the celestial realms, there to discover firsthand the eternity of life, light, and truth, as well as the illusion of death, darkness, and sin. Thus, in one sense, the Great Pyramid may be likened to a gate through which the ancient priests permitted a few to pass toward the attainment of individual completion. It is also to be noted incidentally that if the coffer in the king's chamber be struck, the sound emitted has no counterpart in any known musical scale. And this tonal value may have formed part of that combination of circumstances which rendered the king's chamber an ideal setting for the conferment of the highest degree of the mysteries. Men say of the Great Pyramid that it is the most perfect building in the world, the source of weights and measures, the original Noah's Ark, the origin of language, alphabets, and the scales of temperature and humidity. Few realize, however, that it is the gateway to the eternal. The ancient initiates summoned their disciples from the world of physical pursuits to stand at the threshold of reality, that hypothetical spot between noumenon and phenomenon, between the substance and its shadow, and to pass into the life of the spirit. Rites symbolizing death have signified man's subjugation of his false ego, and of his recognition and realization that his body, mind, and will are but his instruments of energy control and expression. And the corresponding rites of resurrection have signified, like the rising of the phoenix from the ashes, man's bringing from its potentiality to its actuality, from its latency to its manifestation, from its place of occult concealment to its proper place in his consciousness, the sunshine of his divine sovereign self, and his awareness of its true relationship with the one life underlying the universe of universes, and of its first cause, the Absolute. But something went awry. The ancient mysteries were destroyed. Dark ages came upon us. The black goo of influences that would devolve and enslave us again reared up their ugly heads. The new secret societies stand as cheap imitations of the old ones, and breed the blackest corruption. Their secret rites are institutionalized expressions of vulgarity, and their secret plots manifest to debase the world of human affairs, and in the name of top-down government, to turn that world backwards, upside down, and inside out. Today, man worships his own accomplishments. Overwhelmed by their fabrications, the recent centuries make a fetish of civilization and fashion their own gods. Religion wanders aimlessly, and science batters itself impotently. Today's world may know a million secrets, but the ancient world knew one, and that one discourses life, light, and truth, and that one was greater than the million. For the millions sow death and disaster, sorrow and selfishness, lust and avarice. The Frankensteinian civilization built by man has turned against its creator. The great experiment of materiality has failed. Two fundamental forms of ignorance were recognized by the Platonists. The first is the simple kind, and is an ever-active agent urging the mental growth of all creatures, for it is lack of knowledge. The second kind is complex, and is far more dangerous and subtle than the first. It is ignorance of ignorance. Well, today we hear much talk of the consciousness ascending human race. It may or may not be true that some overall awakening is at hand. All the same, while it, however, is true that humanity cries out its readiness either for truth, freedom, and honest growth, or for death in the effort to have them, let us not be fooled by the grand talk of strange prophets. We need only to wipe a bit of dust from our senses and our cognitive apparatus to perceive the facts of the human condition. Right action, right feeling, and right thinking are necessary conditions for right knowing, and today the first three are in diminutive supply. Therefore, so is the fourth. Excuse me. The ancient spirit of wonder and awe has been succeeded by one of consciousness hijacking and lethal sophistication, and humanity has forgotten how infinitesimal, how impermanent and how ignorant it actually is. However, turning one more time to Hall, man is not the insignificant creature that he appears to be. His physical body is not the true measure of his real self. The invisible nature of man is as vast as his comprehension, and as measureless as his thoughts. The fingers of his mind reach out and grasp the stars. His spirit mingles with the throbbing life of cosmos itself. He who has attained to the state of understanding thereby has so increased his capacity to know that he gradually incorporates within himself the various elements of the universe. The unknown is merely that which has yet to be included within the consciousness of the seeker. Excuse me again. The unfolding of man's spiritual nature is as much an exact science as astronomy, medicine, or jurisprudence. To accomplish this end, religions were primarily established, and out of religion have come science, philosophy, and logic as methods whereby this divine purpose might be realized. Suzy Kassem is an American author, filmmaker, philosopher, cultural critic, essayist, poet of Egyptian descent. She informs us from her personal experience that time and corruption have blurred the lines between the living and the dead, between man and nature, and between the physical and the etheric. There was a time when man could communicate with animals, with plants, the ether, and the dead. To do so requires one to access higher levels of consciousness, and this knowledge has been hidden from us. Why? Because then the plants would tell us how to cure ourselves. The animals would show us their feelings. And the dead would tell us that good acts do matter in all. We would come to know that we are all one. And most importantly, we would be alerted of threats and opportunities, good and evil, truth versus fiction. We would have eyes working for humanity from every angle, and this threatens the corrupt. Secret societies exist to hide these truths, and to make sure lies are preserved from generation to generation. The day is at hand when the repugnancy of their secrecy shall be trumpeted, the day when the doom of ignorance shall be sounded. The day will come when seership and telementation shall render said secrecy and ignorance impossible. And the day will come when the secret wisdom shall again be championed, and the lotus flower of the sovereign self shall be opened boldly in the raging of the storm, and bloom silently in the center of life. Right now, each man and woman, down to the last, requires and deserves the truth openly, in honest thought and consequent moral action. Yet, there is an all-out war on for humanity's vital energy, its mind, and its soul. Now, we have said that the Atlanteans instigated the first war. War, the irrefutable evidence of irrationality, still smolders in men's hearts. It cannot die until human selfishness, the hallmark, of the false ego or false self, is overcome. It may be said that the earthly life of man is a struggle from the womb to the tomb, the span of which he measures by time. And if this be so, then it may also be said that man's spiritual life is a battle from his ignorance of his sovereign, dominant, true self to his recognition, realization, and infinite manifestation of it, the duration of which, once its individuality has been established by the man, is forever as the cosmos. And it may furthermore be said that in man's so doing, against the antagonistic forces that would keep his nose to the grindstone of the struggle, and would keep his heart from the glory of the battle, man finds the true war, the only rational one. Calmly and confidently poised, we say again that for the dissolution of secret societies, under whatever names they masquerade, and for whatever purposes they exist, the time is upon us. They have no place in today's world. At the risk of redundancy, secrecy is repugnant.